get started.
Okay,
Little short on membership today. Might be this week after the holiday. On for sure. I'll do some updates and also talk about things. I'm going forward. Follow some action on the part of the commission. I think you're all aware that we forward with over the bridge levy. Whether that's gonna get deferred or not, who knows at this point. But there was some interest in folks trying to put that to a vote, so let's see what ends up. It does go into place. For $6 million that was talked about previous, it would be the recommendation from this group, keep that county tax. Look at that as a new source of revenue and expand size of government and spend that as a way to help cash flow savings for the county. Cash flow out. See where that ends up. So it's one action. The commission's also taken action to make a request to the city of Yankton and to Avera, $1,000 each.
Well, actually, we talked about that Tuesday, but Dan had asked about that. I said, well, we're gonna have a task force meeting this week, talking about recommendations. And what I actually said was, I'd like to present that to the task force for consideration of recommendations.
Okay.
So they haven't done anything yet. If the task force does not make that a recommendation, encourage the commission to go ahead on their own, but it would be nice to have the task force back.
Sure. And we'll get to that EMS recommendation.
And I will say, I'm the one that said that, so I didn't glean that from that meeting, I thought that was the recommendation. There were so many motions flying through that meeting.
There were no motions on that.
Well, that's where he got his information, because I listened to the meeting and there was a discussion, and as I said, it was very hard to follow everything that was going on.
Yep, that's true. Always true.
Right. Thank you for that clarification. I'm gonna hold on the EMS report then a little bit. We'll come back to that. So there's a number of things. I think the EMS subcommittee has completed their recommendations. Why don't we start off as we normally do with financial reporting? Okay, lead on it, Catherine.
Okay. We have been talking and really feel very strongly that one of the first things that we need to start working on is looking for some new software that would create budget and financial reporting in a little bit more robust fashion. I mean, we can do these things in the spreadsheet, but it would be much easier for everyone involved if we can just get the software. Now, we understand that Lincoln County has some software that does interface with this software, in code software. So we think that we probably will need to get together subcommittee. I would think Ryan would be obvious. I think Kathy. You.
You're working good for good work.
Because she loves interfaces. But the exact reason I think she should be on it is because she knows the pitfalls of interfaces better than all of us. Maybe not Ryan, but certainly the rest of us. You know, Colleen and I would probably want to be involved in that too.
Yeah, but kind of estimate on what the cost of that software would be, because we're running way over our IT budget already this year.
The software we looked at was like $3,000 to interface and $2,000 a year.
So as far as even just saving manpower, for inputting and to keep it up to date, if we can get something, I would think if if we could put something with like 7,500 to 1,000 or 10,000, just to get it going, and then, you know, so you might have some of it this year as far as if it's implementation, and that's next year. But, you know, I don't know how much lead time, like, I mean, how much it's gonna cost to get the software to implement, you know, to go talk back.
Just for financial reporting purposes, it's not. Budget.
It would lay on top of, hopefully, you take the downloads from the company, what I've been doing, but if it's taken right in, it's not manipulating. I'm massaging that all along, imagine that and check it. Where you can know that this being from here to here, and it's going that way all the time, and then your checkup later is
Yeah, if you're just really using this there.
also important.
So that is our opinion. That we should be moving on that sooner rather than later. And additionally, we've been meeting with department managers to talk about what the ultimate outcome for them would be. So that they can see that, you know, we're trying to improve their financial reporting that they're receiving so that they can make better decisions about their own department. We're listening to the same questions, the same concerns they all have. None of them are receiving revenue. The grant issue is not just Paul, it's as you heard that from 3 of them now, for sure. And then we're talking about budgeting. Paul was our first victim, so we learned a lot as we've gone along.
I'm not entirely sure what you mean by they're not getting revenue to do their revenue information to the commission.
They do not get a report at the end of the
They're
month.
providing the information. They have that report. That report was given to the commission. Like, for instance, the sheriff gives a report every month on his jail.
Doesn't matter.
I give,
He gives a report and he tracks it. So I, for 2025 actuals, what he has on his report is not the same thing that the auditor has on.
So it doesn't reconcile.
So I don't know that he's not getting the reports from the auditor to say, I've got the same number she's got.
there might be some variation based on when things are paid, but I think there's a pretty good, understanding. I always.
They got
What are-
expenses,
Right.
they do not have revenue.
My revenue goes straight to the treasurer, so it
You
should,
don't get
no, I don't get one.
the revenue you see. So.
Don't you know how much revenue you're receiving?
Well, I, but it is, but I don't report after, we report our own.
I think we all know.
Paul does not get a report that shows if he's got any grants.
The grant.
You find out you get a grant.
Yeah, we get the grant, but I don't know if we get the check.
That's out of the meeting, I'm sure.
Well, it takes time, but we also need to follow up whether we get it or.
My concern is, you know, that we're not just making change for the sake of making change, that it's actually gonna make a difference. You know, I told you our IT budget is way over. We budgeted 100. And they've already spent 153, so you can see that's not going well. And even if you say it's only a few thousand, you can bet CSI is gonna charge us also implement it. So the fact that we're so far over IT budget makes me think that if you wanna do this, we should be doing anything about next year. In the next year's budget.
Oh, Brian, by the time we get this done, it is gonna be next year.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
If we started on it and said we're gonna do it today, Kathy, how long does it take to get something started? It takes months.
It'll take months to implement. But yeah, we got a lot of, like Brian said, we have a lot of upcoming projects too, since we're changing over to the new domain and the new email. There's about $100,000 worth of quotes. That the state's paying for some of it, but
I personally don't see significant change in the service level. We're spending a ton more money. Concerns me.
Yeah,
We have a new provider.
in the IT.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't even broadcast, we need the mission meetings the way it's.
We're spending more, so I guess my point is, if we're gonna spend 250,000, which is what we're on track to do, maybe more. Yeah, we really have to look at getting an on-site staff member for some of that kind of money.
And we talked about that, but Ryan said we've had around hiring somebody so it's a fixed cost.
I wonder if that firm realized there's a budget, because they don't bill us like this.
We talking to about capital planning.
It's pretty consistent across.
Consistent.
I think that's what we're hearing is that there are just differences and inconsistencies that have developed across departments as there's been leadership changes. For we have sheriff, for example, they've got some of their own software. Because they needed it with their number or these things that they have. So there's those kind of issues that you have to take into
Sure,
consideration.
they're using some software the city uses.
There's nothing wrong with any of these changes. If you email someone to me, there's nothing wrong with them. I'm just saying, hey, things are being done, maybe not in the same way that you're suggesting we should do them. For instance, the capital projects. I think I've always seen department heads come to the budget hearings and express their capital needs, vehicles, what have you. And usually they will also say, and maybe 2 years down, the road, and you just, maybe it's not down on paper, but you know, as far as 5-year plan. But I think the commission does get information. Department heads obviously are going to be able to run, you know.
I think you know that as a department head, but the commissioner, is John gonna know that, well, in 2 years, the highway department needs to maintain her at the same time that you gotta put in a new IT system and the jail needs something big? There's no, or a new commissioner coming in, they don't have that information anyplace because it might be, you might know your department really well. There's no document that.
Well,
says
I don't
this
oppose
is
that
what they-
idea. I'm just, it's.
And like Doug's saying, like if Mike wants to put a schedule together to replace one maintainer every 3 years. Then if I don't remember that and I'm not gonna be there and there's gonna be a new commissioner there, that new commissioner's not gonna know that. So if it's on a report that the commissioners get either before every meeting or every other meeting, and you can sit there and say, okay, now we've got this budgeted out, planned out for 3 years or 5 years, and we can go to work and say, okay, now we know that 2 years from now, we got a plan for this budget. That, but the way it is, not right now, Mike will come in and say, for next year, I need a new road grader. Okay, well, we can do that. But maybe we should see if we can get another year out of one of the maintainers, and maybe we need to buy a new dump truck. Or something, some things like that is what I think this reporting would help out. And I'm not saying either to go out and purchase $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on this year's budget. But I think there should be a plan to budget it for, like, we got a budget coming up for next year. So let's figure out what we can do there. And you're gonna be the one that's gonna manage it next year, for next year's budget. So that that's in the budget, because I feel very confident that that's kind of the way we should move forward. When I came in 3 years ago, I had no idea what even the budget looked like. Patty gave us this white book that was this thick.
There's a lot of information. If you read it.
I went through it. In fact, I did a spreadsheet for every different department, but I got tired of doing that. And that may be not the right term to say, but at the same token, it's very cumbersome where if you got one report that says this is this far, and even if it's only a 3-year projection plan, we've got data from 3 years prior to. So
I think consistency and the look of the budget across all departments would really help the. So, I've seen some really nice budgets, Paul's got a beautiful budget, Sheriff's got a great budget. But every budget is different. And I think if you had a budget that looked the same from one department to the other, it would make you to understand. The budget that I got in front of me right now, there's a year-to-date actual.
June 30th.
No.
No, May,
May.
Well, I have the.
but it does not have the year estimated total. So you
So what I
can't,
get does, I don't know what you're talking
okay,
about.
well, but that's my point. Everybody's doing it slightly differently. So if you've got 23 actual, 24 actual, 25 actual, the 26 budget, fine, and then an estimate for 26, and then a 27 budget, you can look across and see what looks wrong.
I don't, we all have that same budget. It's presented to us when you do your, before you do your. And it says all those things you just described.
It's not,
That's,
I don't know what you're looking at, but it's obviously not what I take to the budget here.
but I think you're not talking just the budget here, you're talking about financial reporting throughout the year.
That's right.
So that you can, the commission can compare progress and the target directors can to what the financial plan for the year is.
A lot of departments, and I do this every 3 months. Is come in and tell you how my budget's.
Right.
I think you can share it. But the highway department makes 50.
So you do,
But
but
not all of them do, I grant you that.
Right.
And it goes in tough revenue generally. Trying to do.
And I guess what I'm saying is,
It's on the,
we get the quarterly reports from you guys, which is fine.
We'll do it monthly if you want.
yeah.
But even then, what I want to do is project out so that we know that the commission knows what they are planning for.
No, it was.
You guys do, and what we get from the auditor's office, we can't do.
Brian gives your example, the IT budget, that would show up in this, that. Here's what was
It
budgeted.
shows up. I read all of our budgets every month. It's available. That's where I got the information. Cassie, deputy. Provide. You can get 31-page sheets that tells you how your budget's doing.
You can get them because you know that
Anybody can get
internally,
public record.
but the commission does not receive that information.
They could, if they requested.
Okay, so let's move on. These are not in it today, and that's part of the reason why we're here. Okay. Yankton?
I think that's it.
I would have,
Anybody else said?
I would add one other thing, that is payroll and time.
Yeah, it's
Some
fine.
variety of departments as well, in terms of the process is used to estimate that turning time cards in the middle of the month and estimating or projecting what individual employees are gonna spend the second half of the month.
Right.
And then reconciling that at the end if there are variances. Creates a lot of extra work for leaders compared to any timekeeping system that I've ever seen. And it's ripe for errors as well. And abuse.
And you don't get, they are not, I have not seen that they can go in and get a report when they're going or on the salary budgets to see how many hours an employee has, how many regular hours, how many overtime hours, how many total hours and dollars for each employee. You really need that.
It's on your pay schedule
Accurately.
every month. The pay stubs I get in the department every month.
Okay, but fine, pay stub. One of the, is that electronic?
Well, it's an email, you know.
So you need that to really accurately.
I-
do your
I do that.
Salary budget.
I do that every month.
Yeah. Re-enter it into.
And as far as this time sheets, those are closer to the end of the month, usually in the last week, they present those. So yes, possible somebody can have a sick day on the 30th, and that would have to be adjusted the next month. But I don't think that's happening a lot.
I'm concerned about hourly staff that are. And so we really should have some.
And it's one thing if you're in a department of 3 or 4 people, that's another if you've got 20 or 30.
Just an observation. I would like it as an entry.
Seems like you'd be spending your time as a manager. Kind of things.
I see it as part of my job as manager to monitor those kind of things.
Appreciate that. We think there's an opportunity to improve the system, make the system express.
Well, change is not always improved. I would say. You know, there's, I think there's kind of
I would say the
overriding.
county is at significant risk for timekeeping material system.
That's the idea in the county, as we did fishing recently. I think our county is pretty. property tax comparison shows that. I think if we divided our number of employees into our payroll, we compared it to a city or a hospital or a county, we do pretty well for the efficiency.
We're just saying, these are some gaps that we believe in. Yes. And on specific process that's in place now, or auditor wants to stay with the same process that we have now. The decisions, we started this process, this task force can only make recommendations. What else? That's the main findings. These are things that stand out to us coming in from the business community. None of us would operate a business this way.
Well, counties are different.
They are, but you still employ people.
I'm saying we're different. We're not necessarily doing. We're not necessarily doing it a better way. I think we're pretty efficient. I mean, we have, every department has some areas, obviously anybody can improve, but I don't think it's broken.
Appreciate that. Anything else from financial? Okay. Policies and procedures, we'll start to put together some drafts for some policies that will say that the state's attorney's office has agreed that developing some policies and procedures that can be adjusted or tweaked or edited, modified, whatever, going forward, makes a lot of sense as opposed to putting everything into the employee handbook and reviewing it periodically. With the agreement that when we have our first set of policies and procedures, that we'll review those with the state's attorney's office. Hope that at our next meeting in 2 weeks, with less than 2 weeks, we'll be able to send out a draft of those policies for you to go ahead and see. Right now, what we've got is capital planning, grant review and reporting process, minimum fund balance and government policy. A number of HR related things that the HR ones probably are better off in the hand. We'll do that. Here comparison. In the updates.
I did share a couple of new numbers, latest presentation of that. We, and I don't think I shared it to our group last time, even I was here, that we have a high number of county roads that we maintain in relation to the number of square miles that we have. And it's almost a road of mile maintained per square. And that, at least among the 11 counties in our comparison, and probably among a lot of counties, is really high. The large share of them are doing a third to a half mile of county road per square mile. And there's one reason for that is the fact that we have 16 townships. We're organized, therefore that becomes a county responsibility. That practically doubles. And I'm sure there's other counties that have that to some degree, but 7 is a lot. So, yeah, I think that's an argument for the road and bridge levy that was passed by the commission last month. We do have, and we obviously have those Young River bridges. That's even a bigger argument for the road and bridge levy, because I think what we should do with it, definitely a chunk of it, a big chunk of it, is put it into a Jim River Bridge fund.
And if we get it passed, it's implemented correctly, that's the way to be there, because you do build a reserve, the code says to build a reserve fund also, where not a lot of other departments, you can actually build a reserve according to code.
John, do you have thoughts at this point as to what percentage you would use reserve fund versus?
I think 30%, because you're gonna be, yes, we got a big shot round 1.4 million. But when this one is done, we're not gonna rebuild another bridge for 3 to 5 years. So if you take a third of that 1.5 million from the road and bridge levy, even 25% of it, and you put that into a reserve account by 5 years from now, if you get a good grant like we did this time, you'll be able to write out a check to pay for it versus stealing from the highway department.
For one problem, every right to do it. The referral effort means that we're not going to be able to really count on revenue in our budget process because we won't go until after November election for any of the habits. That's one part. It's not good, but we'll just have to deal with it.
Anything else on?
And that's kind of why I said too, you know, and I'm not throwing fingers or pointing fingers or putting anybody under the bridge, but if commission would have done this 20 years ago, available, you know, and started it back then, and even then, if it went 30 cents instead of 60 cents or whatever, you know, we'd have had that reserve built up. And our highway department would have been flush, just like Minnehaha counties. Minnehaha County does not take any revenue from their general fund to furnish to pay for their highway.
Whereas in our county, about half of the highway department budget comes from the general fund. And the rest comes from license plates and real estate.
That's this year's budget, versus a couple previous years, it was actually.
Well, there was some COVID money in those higher years. Yeah.
And occasionally, if you have heavy rainfall or something, you might get a little bit of FEMA money to fix. But it happens pretty much.
Or anything else that the peer subcommittee is working on at this point?
Not at this point. I'm open to any requests as far as something you want me to look into.
Frank, can we compare FTEs now compared to?
Pre-COVID. Yeah, I can do that. Just talking to Mike Salachi yesterday, and I think somebody from the other task force had shared with me that, you know, we need to look at cutting back the FTEs we added during the COVID money years. And he talked about the highway department. I said, we've actually gotten smaller. That COVID money went to projects, materials, but we actually decreased our highway crew 19 to 17 during the COVID years. Mike did replace himself when he got the job, and then he didn't fill another.
And equalization.
And well, equalization is an interesting thing to bring up, because we have this unfilled position there. And the emails, you know, you and I and Tom and Paul were exchanging, Tom had this idea of creating these flex people that can move from office to office, and that's harder than you might think in the county, because each of those offices, very highly specialized, a lot of institutional knowledge is required. It'd be pretty hard to take that new person and train them in all 4 of our core, or 5 of our core offices. It's asking a lot. But I mean, you can try it.
I thought you had on the 11, the FTE numbers.
Yeah, I have that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Doug wants me to specifically, and I'll do this, look at 2015,
Oh.
and I can do that by looking at our 2015 payroll published, and I'll compare it to 2026, bring that to the next meeting.
Yeah, or even 2019,
Yeah.
pre-COVID too.
Yeah.
But just so we have comparison, in part because we need to know, is that something that we should need to be resides in, or is that a recommendation?
There are a couple offices that did increase during that time. You know,
Do you have it by department?
yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
All I have to do is take payroll from whatever year, 2020, COVID money wasn't really affecting this year. So I take 19 or 20, look at our payroll on each department. They have it separated in the payroll, unlike some payrolls, just listed. And then I just look at the same thing in 2026. Yeah, it'll tell me that number. It's a good question.
Maybe if we could, I'll put that on the agenda for
Yeah.
2 weeks, so probably if that's enough time.
We'll see a little bit of an increase in perhaps the sheriff, and I know we'll see an increase in state's attorney. We'll see a decrease in highway. Trying to think if there's a whole lot of other changes that have been made, Gary.
Most of our departments are 1 or 2 people.
We'll clarify.
It's not just for us, it's also for the taxpayers. Public perspective.
Ambulance might have grown by 1. Sure, I'll check. Ambulance is a hard one because you have all these. You know, I tend to probably just mainly look at the full-time people. Those part-time people might work 5 hours.
Right. Sometimes they don't raise it up for a month or something.
Jeff and Troy could probably give you that number though, as far as whether we have increased.
hours worked.
Hours. There you go.
And then you capture everybody.
I think I've used FTEs, which is,
If you pass hours worked, yeah.
That's an unusual one, that they have so much volunteer, part-time staff contributing.
Okay, any other thought? I want to move on to EMS, and we just finalized this afternoon, so I will send this out ahead of the next meeting. Some of this, I talked about our last meeting, but we tweaked a couple of things, so, so Jeff, continue to work on improving operational performance, as the deficit has dropped from 400,000 to 200,000, maybe a little bit less. Some of that are changes in billing collection practices. County was not collecting some balances that they could have collected previously, so that has helped that financial performance. They've also picked up on let's say 53% increase transfers, which helps monetary perspective. They're probably limited on being able to do that more, unless they have additional staff or handle equipment.
So it's not, I think what you're saying is he's projecting a $200,000 deficit this year.
Actually,
It was more than that last year.
yeah, they were as much as 400,000.
So we haven't had a full year to see.
Correct.
But 400,000, what I had in mind for last year.
Yeah, and he thinks he'll come in.
And that's where I come up with the allocation recommendation, is that, if they're, frankly, we're kind of a delivery service, patient delivery service for, and as far as the city goes, such a high percentage of calls in the city. That's why they seem like two logical partners to ask for some help.
I'll get to those because we do have recommendations. We also think that Jeff could put together a business plan to look at other possible opportunities, whether it's enhancing the number of transfers, looking at other adjacent geography where there may be, I call them ambulance deserts, or at least gaps in services that we may be asked to cover anyway. So we have a plan, is mutual aid service, does that, what's the impact economically? What are the resources that are needed to be able to do those types of things? Does it make sense financially, or is it just gonna increase the subsidy that's required? At least there would be a plan presented. Plan to project future capital needs, because ambulances and medical equipment are expensive. So tying that, again, Jeff has a pretty good handle on that for the EMS system, but it needs to tie into the overall county plan as well. We think we should be continued discussion about a countywide ambulance district. We did have discussions with South Dakota Department of Health. We do not need to set up a separate organization to operate that. Would be a separate board or advisory group that would run day to day, month to month, with reserve powers back to the county. So I think there's additional flushing out of that needs to occur. We also know it's time to talk about any additional assessments. So it's road and bridges now, so it might be the next year. Flush through the ambulance district to see where people are at with that. Approaching the city of Yankton for financial support. 85% of the calls being within the city of Yankton. I think we're gonna have to figure out what's the message to the taxpayers of Yankton who are paying the same as anybody else in the county now. Why should they pay more?
They're paying for all of those, and it's a long list. I could, how many mandated services, which ambulance is not one, it's just one that kind of push us. And we have every class A city in the state, citizens are paying county taxes. Also contributing those cities to the ambulance. I had city managers over the years give me different reasons why I don't think they should have to contribute. I have a reason why they should. If this road and bridge levy is successful, that's gonna yield $213,000 a year for the city, money they spent no political capital to get, money they didn't even expect. This would be an opportunity to ask, since that was a county created revenue, so to speak, ask for some of that windfall back to help with any costs. That's my argument this year, and I'm sure they'll have a reason that doesn't make sense to them, but.
But they can't give it till they get it.
I'll remind everybody, everybody will remember this when I say it. Jeff Schaefer, who's seen a lot of city county budgets, first thing he said to us when he spoke to us was, why doesn't the city help the ambulance? Well, the reason is because they always have different excuses, but hopefully we can get something started.
Well, we'll see where that goes. Now go to commission. There was discussion that we talked earlier. This week. To make that request and a similar request to other. As a private business, we'll see other. And then just the other things we've talked about, what we categorized under broader county considerations, HR practices, record keeping, timekeeping, financial 3 to 5 year financial. Gene, anything else? So we'll get this sent out to you ahead of the next meeting. I don't think it's fair to ask you to approve this or edit it, modify it, whatever, and send it on to the commission when you haven't seen it yet.
I do want to say one thing, the performance evaluation, I think most, I'm gonna say, I think most department heads are doing those. I can't speak for all of it. There's probably some that don't. But I just want to make the point, it's not like nobody's doing it.
Yeah, agreed. Again, it's that consistency across all of the departments. It's not there. And when the performance reviews in the handbook says that they're encouraged, not required. Schedule gets busy, things that are encouraged probably don't make the cut list.
The secondary issue then is what do you do with them in terms of, I generally keep mine in my office, except for the ones we used to have, we used to time them employee's anniversary, hiring anniversary date, and that's when they'd be under consideration for a step increase. That's when I think most people would do them, and they pick them shorter version of it to the commission when they requested the step increase. And, so I don't know if that's gonna reduce the department heads who do them, if that was their reason for doing them. Concerned about that, but I think they're important. I do evaluations every week. I mean, I tell my employees every day if they're doing something right or if they're not. Some, I remember they said, see, annual evaluations. I think we need to do it more often.
Yeah, and I think we would all agree with that, but at least once, it should be once a year, it should be a formal sit down, talk about what's going well, like where's the improvement? What are the plans for the next year? Is it a new skills, a new responsibilities that they're gonna work on?
So my point though is where should those be placed? I mean, department heads, I think prefer to keep those in-house, but maybe what you're suggesting is they should all go to the auditor's office. The step increases and the reasoning for those did go to the auditor's office and to the commission. But the more in-depth evaluations, I think most of them keep them in their own office file.
Yeah, and I think at this point, you almost have to. So there's a decision made on, is there a more centralized process to bring those in, especially if you have somebody that you're going through some type of disciplinary. That. Oh,
Security. But security, I mean,
yes,
it's not in the manager's office, it's not in the department head's office.
hold around the desk.
Bring a drawer, somebody can.
So those were all the items that are on my list.
I do have one thing from the other task force to bring forward. So they had a question today as we were looking at our priorities that we were looking at for economic development. And we were wondering if in your financial analysis of what you've been looking at, have you looked at discretionary formula at all to see revenues that are brought in or opportunities that might create if that formula were at all changed to create additional revenues for the county?
Okay. Financial reporting, that at all. Not for anybody.
So are we gonna talk at all about Senate Bill 96 and whether we want a recommendation tied to that?
I wanna just bring something up first, and then we should talk on that. So Tuesday night, we had a presentation by South Dakota Fit. That is, their, investment firm that works towards other counties. And we should have looked at this a lot sooner, but just other things came up. So that, yeah, turn in, and you could look through this also, but they furnish a money market, treasury instrument, US agency securities, and also certificates of deposit. And what the presentation showed was they will guarantee a 3.03% rate increase. Where what we have now in some savings accounts on some, a couple of CDs and everything are yielding about 0.5%. So we're gonna do a resolution, we agreed to do a resolution Tuesday night to go with this South Dakota Fit program to move all of our savings accounts, everything but the general fund, into the South Dakota Fit program to where they will do investments for us in county, which I don't know the actual numbers, but I was told it could increase revenue by $200,000 annually. As long as we have the same amount of, the money is there, the principal is there.
I've heard that 0.5%. I'm not sure how accurate it is. But I think it speaks to the problem here is that the commission needs to communicate with the treasurer. They talk about it in meetings.
I've talked to Patty about moving them into a different fund where there's, there was a time when Elkhorn Valley Bank did a CD at 4.5%.
Yeah.
And there was CDs that we were getting 0.5%.
Totally agree, we should maximize that return. I'm just saying, we need to improve our communication rather than criticize the treasurer of the meeting.
I agree.
No, you haven't really criticized.
But I talked to her about moving it.
Is she open to it?
No. But I'm an elected official, I'm responsible for this money, and I'm doing the best.
Well, we need to improve our communication, make her understand the reason.
And I agree with you, it should be brought up in the commission meeting. And I just think now with the resolution, I don't know if she's gonna be, where she's gonna be at with it, but I don't think this should be open out in the open.
Yeah, you're definitely right that we should maximize our earning.
So if you want this book, go through it. And just kind of go through and make sure that what we've been told is accurate before.
It is a South Dakota department.
Yeah, South Dakota Fit is what it's.
Yeah, because I know you're kind of supposed to, if Patty's doing it, it has to be within the county, and it has to be.
I think the funds still stay kind of at the bank that where they're at. Somehow they.
Okay.
I thought she had a good presentation. When
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
Thing is, I didn't bring my report tonight, but I did have our investment earnings total in there. I want to say it was 170, and some counties were certainly higher. However, they have more money to invest than we do, I would think, and that's probably the biggest reason. But yeah, there's certainly some potential here to get that higher.
And that's, frankly, that's easy money. You can move it from 0.5% to 3%. That's a lot easier than finding those dollars to cut out of somebody's budget.
Right. That's all I.
Thanks, Jack. Brian, I'll come back to you. It's Bill 96.
Well, thing about it is, I actually believe, even with the addition of this road and bridge levy, if we get, through the referral process, I think we're still gonna rank fairly low in terms of property taxes per capita. I don't think it's certainly not gonna achieve the top of the list, might not be lowest.
However, I think to that point, Brent, I think we should project that to say, here's our list. If we had the road and bridge tax in today,
Yeah,
here's what it would be per capita and where we would fall.
I can do that. The reason so many counties obviously are they're opt-outs of road and bridge levies, and there's quite a few of them, and hit quite a list, is because counties have an unsustainable, unrealistic business model. We don't get any sales tax. We rely primarily on property tax, which is capped. And the amount of this cap isn't keeping up with the inflationary costs of most of the stuff that we need to buy. So that's an on-sound, and that's why so many counties are doing this. Hopefully we can get it done. But as far as Senate Bill 96, Secretary of the Department of Revenue did a presentation at the commission meeting Tuesday. It just seems like a no-brainer. Now, I know there's gonna be opposition, but he said it would replace he's done projection on, it would replace the owner-occupied portion of your property tax bill in Yankton County. That's 27% of your property tax bill. And yeah, we're gonna pay some of that back in terms of the half cent. However, two things, obviously that half cent is gonna be paid a lot, chunk of it's gonna be paid by shoppers from surrounding counties, visitors to the lake, tourists. And so we're getting some of that paid for by other than county residents, you know. I just think, and also he said, almost everybody is gonna save, as far as the amount they're gonna save on the property taxes is gonna be a lot more than the increased spending they're gonna have for sales tax. Yeah, the actual numbers, but almost everybody is gonna have a net gain.
Wasn't this example, $500 property tax reduction, take $100,000 in expenses, for sales tax?
You must watch the video.
I had a couple conversations since then.
So anyway, yeah, I just think it's a no-brainer. There's gonna be opposition. People who aren't owner occupied are probably gonna object, but some of those folks have benefited from changes in the tax formula. You know, obviously, we all know, was it about 15 years ago, Gene, that the formula on ag property and ag homes was changed from market value to production value. So what that actually did to the property tax burden is that agricultural property owners, their share of the property tax burden went from 28% to 22%. In that same time period, the owner occupied share of the burden went from 33% to, I believe, 40%. So it was, it obviously was to agriculture's benefit and to the homeowner's detriment. Agriculture's tax relief became the owner occupied tax burden. That's why I think this makes sense. And it'll also reduce some of that property tax increase we're gonna have from the levy if it survives. I just think it all makes a lot of sense.
Why don't we, I'll put that on the agenda for our meeting on the 21st, so we're really us. So that, see if I want to take it. There are other information that we like, we can get the projections sent out with the agenda ahead of the meeting, so we have that information. Or anything else that you would like to have in terms of and things that
I can share a little bit of my personal thoughts, and I think the county commission is we're gonna implement it. We can't, originally we wanted to just say, we want to go on a ballot in November and let the people decide if they want to. Can't do that. It's in a codified law for that particular bill that it has to be approved by the county commission, and then the community can refer it. So we're probably, as Yankton County, we're probably going to implement it just so that we can get it out to them and let them decide actually if they want to pay this extra 0.5%. Personally, I don't like that tax at all because it's unfair, and all taxes are not fair. But if you get an implement in tax, it should be fair. Yankton County, there's counties that are probably not going to do it, not going to benefit them. Take a town like Mano or Hutchinson County, they're not going to be benefited very much. In fact, the county is probably going to benefit from them coming the same way. So that's why I don't feel it's a fair tax, but I think we have to take advantage of it. And like Brian says, we have to take care of Yankton County. So I think we'll we got until September basically to decide if we want to. Won't go into effect until January 1. And IRS said, or the Department of Revenue said they have to have 90-day notice if we make that decision.
or if it was referred back to vote in November, so 90 days after that then.
No, if we say we want to do it, we got to give the Department of Revenue 90 days to basically kind of implemented. And then from that point, and then if it gets referred and it gets voted down in November, then I'm just gonna shut down.
What date do you have to have it voted on at the commission to be able to get it on?
I'm gonna say
Ballot.
August 15th or something like that.
But then you still have to figure out how long it's gonna take to get the
Get it on.
petition signed to get it.
45 days prior to November, I think is what the number is. So we'll decide as soon as we have.
Can't you only do it twice a year, January first and
Or
July
July.
first?
Think about sales tax, and I understand the critics of it, talk about it unfairly affecting lower income and so forth. The thing about it that's good from a government standpoint, property taxes do not reflect, keep up with inflation. In a way, sales tax does. The sales tax, when there's inflation, those inflated prices are getting more sales tax. So when inflation is high, city sees more sales. But it's kind of nice from a government standpoint to see revenue that keeps up inflation, because that's our issue.
Say, that's true if wages keep up with inflation. If wages don't, then people have to spend less because they can't afford it.
But in the example I'm using, which is the city of Yankton, they weren't spending less, I don't think. They were just getting more from the inflationary costs, which, it's unfortunate, but at least that keeps up with their own costs. That makes sense.
Other topics. Minutes. Anything else from our public? Media?
Two weeks,
21st. On that, back on the Tuesday, we adjusted it this week because of the holiday. So we'll be back here, maybe looking across the tables again at each other. 21st.
We can make sure of that.
So, agenda items I have, the EMS recommendations, policies and procedures, the FTE comparison, Senate Bill 96.
good meeting.
Okay. Thank you all. We'll be back in 8 minutes today. Thanks.
You're putting it back, you're putting it in monthly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is December.
Yeah.
I see this one here.
Not